And good morning, everyone. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Africa. And good morning to the entire world. We are live on the Good Morning Education Show, and we're excited that you're here with us today. And of course, as usual, I have my expert analyst with us here. Titi, good morning. How are you today?
I'm fine. Good morning. Good morning.
And then, of course, Ugochi, how are you? Ugochi, are you there? Okay, while we're waiting for Ugochi to respond, I think um, Jude is also online. So, good morning, Jude. Good morning, Mr. Jude. How are you today?
Good morning, Mr. Rotimi. Good morning, TT. Good morning.
Good
Safety check.
morning.
Okay, safety check. I heard your voice. How are you today? All right. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about today, and I believe that we would use the opportunity to uh, deal with some issues and also talk about some areas of creativity and innovation that might be explored as we talk around improving the education sphere. So before we do that, it's been long we've had the news, so we'll try to use the news to, whet the appetite. There's some
Okay.
interesting headlines. Yeah. So
Okay,
so
okay.
so we're going to move over to the news, and then we'll come back right after the news. So very quickly, we're going to welcome Chidera to the floor as she takes the news.
We need more volume. We need more volume. More volume. We can't hear you, Chidera.
Oh, really? Okay, let's see.
Okay. Hello and good morning.
Yeah, that's fine.
Welcome to the
Yes.
news at the Good Morning Education Show. Okay. I am Chidera Amuze and here are the headlines. Okay. NAPPS to FG, private schools ready to resume. Coronavirus, FG set to pay private school teachers salary arrears. And now onto the news. NAPPS to FG, private schools ready to resume. The National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools (NAPPS) has assured the federal government of the readiness of private schools under its fold to resume for the West African Senior School Certificate Examination and other terminal examinations. The association's clamor for resumption follows the withdrawal of Nigeria's participation in the sub-regional examination by the federal government over safety reasons Wednesday last week. National President of the association, Chief Yemi Otubela, said at a press conference held virtually on Monday that the group had prepared its members for resumption in line with the protocol set by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC). To prepare, Otubela said nearby schools had made provision for hand washing, infrared testing, sick bay, sanitizers, and face masks for workers. He added that relevant workers have been trained on how to manage the children to avoid spread the pandemic. Seating arrangements also adjusted to allow for 2-meter distance between the children and schools decontaminated. Otubela also called on the federal and state governments to release funds to ministries of examination to their private school counterparts. Lamenting the suspension of the WAS, the NAPPS president, who is also the proprietor of Lagoon Schools, Agege, said it will cause emotional trauma for the affected SS3 pupils who have been preparing for the examination and may cause them to lose interest in education. He also said parents were beginning to demand for refund of examination fees from schools since the news became public. Since only terminal classes will be resuming initially, Otubela said there will be enough room for physical distancing. He also said the government should set up a task force to monitor that schools comply with safety requirements in schools. The NAPPS president thanked the federal government for including private schools in the 2.3 trillion stimulus loans for businesses affected by the pandemic and pledged to provide them with personal protective equipment. Coronavirus. FG set to pay private schools teachers' salary arrears. The Nigerian government has lifted the hopes of private school teachers who have been enduring hardship following the prolonged closure of learning centers due to the coronavirus pandemic. A report by The Guardian indicates that the federal government is most likely to take over payment of teachers' outstanding salaries since the lockdown started back in March. Chief Yomi Otubela, the president of National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools, disclosed this at a Zoom conference. According to Otubela, the salary arrears of private school teachers will be paid from 2.3 trillion stimulus package recently approved by the federal government. He went on to note that the association had engaged the federal government in a proposal sent to the Economic Sustainability Committee headed by Vice President Yemi Osibanjo on the need to support private schools to cushion the effects of the pandemic. In another report by AIT News, the NAPPS president explained that only schools that are enlisted as members of his association will benefit from the interventions. And that's news on the show. Thank you so much for staying with us. I am Chidera Amute. Do stay safe out there. Goodbye.
We can't hear you. Your volume.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Mr. Iben, welcome. Safety check.
Good
Howdy.
morning.
Good morning.
TT, howdy.
Rotimi, your mic is on mute.
Posh
Yes.
lady, howdy.
Okay,
Wow.
unmuted now. Thank God.
Okay, so I was actually giving my ATM password.
That's nice.
I wanted to add to the palliative, but I guess you guys didn't hear the
That's good.
You can repeat. You can repeat.
I don't do
He's
this
alive.
twice. Dr. Mrs. Ronke Posh,
The Posh lady.
AKA
headquarters
morning,
of
everyone.
Nigeria. How are you
Good.
today?
Good to see you. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
All right.
Good.
For some of us, this is like a mental gym because some of us don't wake up this too early. And so thankfully to the Good Morning Education show, some people can't skip the gym any longer. So
Yeah.
you're burning the calorie is staying awake. Those who know, hashtag I see you.
hashtag ID.
All right.
Don't let them know.
We're going straight into the conversation for the day, and I would like to thank those who are joining us across the world. I would like to thank them for joining. I believe that it's going to be an exciting time today. So let's just get started. We're speaking on the Ministry of Private Schools. Some people probably will be thinking, when did that start? Is that existent? What is that about? What are you guys up to? Well, we've been in the spirit of speaking about how to improve the education sector. And we've also discovered that it is times like this that we need to use feedbacks and also information of things that are happening in the sector to begin to think around things that we might need to explore. Most in particular, we're talking about the concerns or the need for us to get to a place where we have so many people being taken care of. When this coronavirus pandemic issue started, and then everyone was told to shut down and lock down their schools, we realized that at some point in time, especially towards the end of April, we discovered that there was some level of, how do I put it now? The private schools and the private institutions, they felt a little bit out of the committee of things or the works of things. It looked more like everybody was left to themselves. I recall many people were saying that there was a poor messaging from the regulators as regards the concerns of private schools. And whenever the expression came or whenever that was addressed, it was more or less like another regulation: do not open, do not go online, do not call it short term, resume, sort yourself out. And there are many things that bother private schools, especially their existence, knowing how critical their role is within the education sphere. So there are many things that the private schools do, and their presence is taking care of, is almost like some level of outsourcing of the public education demands for the government. So I think that it's not out of place for us to look at this. We already have a Ministry of Education, and we know that there's a department within the Ministry of Education that more or less is just dealing with private schools. But if we look at the numbers, the question now comes to fore. Is a department enough to take care of the demands of the sector, of the private schools? Is a department enough? I recall that Ondo State in 2011 or 2012 was able to start off by having quality assurance away from a unit and a routine, and they made it a full-fledged, like almost like a agency. You understand? And Lagos State also, some years afterward, also made the quality assurance as a separate, organ, more or less like an agency. So if quality assurance, as we know very, very well that it's playing a very strong and vibrant role, how do we look at it from the angle of the private education? So this is why we're talking about that today. And I would like to start with the prophet in our midst, in case that is gotten some level of prophecy, as the case may be. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from Dr. Jude, Prophet Jude, what the Lord has to say concerning this.
Okay,
So, Jude, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rotimi. So my take on Ministry of Private Schools, it's basically a channel, or how will I put it? Okay, it's basically it's more than just a department. Should be a separate ministry on itself, because they are representing a large group of private schools. And you agree with me that private schools bring some level of decorum to the table of education, and private school bring some level of high quality package to the level of education, even in Nigeria. I know there's quality assurance and generally, but the truth is that the way a quality assurance for government, we rate government schools, will be kind of different the way it will rate private schools. And we know that private schools actually, most of them anyway, if not all of them, but most of them have this high quality which they offer their students. Now, for a Ministry of Private Education or private schools, it's going to be helpful in deciding how private schools should thrive, more than putting both public and private schools together to like what we have now. So it's going to make it possible for private schools to thrive without being drawn back, because what I will see now in this pandemic, private schools being held back because of the public schools. So it's not because even some private schools some private schools can meet that demand of what they call it, isolation camp and all that. They could create something similar to that in there because they have size, they have space. But most times it's because of the public schools and how it will make the public schools look. That's why they are actually telling everybody to become the same. Private and public should follow the same routine. But most times we find that private schools actually can offer these services that we're even thinking is difficult to, they can offer it to some level. But because we are not having our separate ministry to decide how we run our affairs or how private schools should run their affairs, definitely anything that happens to the public school will definitely will affect the private schools. one way or the other. So that's where I think we should start. The government should start planning ahead for private schools, or private schools should start taking the bulls by the horn and march to the government for the government to hear them in terms of having their own private agency or private table, so that we know what we are dealing with. Because now we don't know if we are dealing with both public and private, or we are dealing with only public, or we are dealing with only private. So now it's a bit confusing, but it's time we start taking things by ourselves as private institutions.
Okay. Rotimi, allow me to throw in some figures and, play a bit of the devil's advocate here.
Okay.
When ministries are created, they're really created to address usually a majority or a particular issue. To put some statistics to it, I remember some statistics I saw way back. It said that in primary school, there are about 24 million children in primary school. And of those 24 million children in primary school, we're not counting the out of school, only about less than 5 million of them were actually in private schools. I remember that Lagos once said that it's estimated that there are 17,000 private schools, but however, only 5,000 of those are actually registered. So in a sense, 11,000 of them are illegal, they're not registered. So when I'm throwing this out there is to really put a size to how many private schools are and how many of the population. They're actually a magnitude in terms of numbers, but in terms of the amount of the population that they cater for, it's actually small compared to the public schools. So I just felt it would be good to put those figures out there to play a bit of devil's advocate as we make the case for.
I don't know, but we have so many people flying around with different statistics. We heard, I think it was also last year emphatically that it was 18,900 private schools registered. That there were non-registered. So it's not 5,000. For example, I can tell you for a fact that, for example, NAPS Abuja has up to 5,000 members, right? There might be different grades in that. Even Lagos, we have different school associations and we also have people who there's a time, even the Ministry of Education sold out a directory that had over 3,000 to 5,000 schools that are private schools, and that was back in 2008. And of course the number has increased. Yes. So what we're saying is, I even had that copy back then. I had that copy, very comprehensive. But of course, schools would have shut down. Some schools would have come up. But the truth of the matter is this, and I'm excited that we're already having some conversation online. This might even be a good time to also say, I was planning to announce it, but we might need to also begin to have what we call a call-in opportunity for guests who probably have solutions or who want to counter some of the things we're saying. So someone like Ashimolo Ademuyiwa, you all know Ashimolo. He says there is a directorate of private education in the ministry. Now, if we follow the statistics that Titi, that you've said and that you've shared, now the statistics that you've shared, if we were to go by it and we said that there are 5,000 private schools in Lagos. Registered, yes, registered, which I believe it's not accurate, which is registered. Now, if we now say that we have over 12,000 unregistered, and we know that Lagos State itself has 1,700 public schools, so private schools still outnumbers the public schools, the registered one. Now, the ones that are not registered and they are private schools, I believe that there is a need for them to be also brought into the spectrum, because leaving them itself, it poses a challenge of even what the ministry is set up to do. And so, and they are actually taking care of, in a way, they are taking care of some numbers and some catchment areas that the public system or the public education system through the public school is still not doing. Because a lot of children have to walk a considerable amount of distance before getting to schools. You understand? Which is why I think that it's not necessarily that we just have a private school ministry, but I want to, and I think I would like to hear Ronke Posh's idea or concerns on this, because primarily, Ronke Posh, please keep your video on. Primarily because there was a statement that was made in May, and that statement was that we are taking care of the public schools. That was by the ministry, that there are concerns of the public. And that left a window of interpretation to say, you know what, if our concerns are public schools, then as a ministry, priority-wise, there is nothing like private school in our agenda. And private schools did not emerge and evolve in them on their own, especially the registered ones. So the 5,000 registered one is a directorate finding the best of expression, or should they have a ministry to grow their concerns? Because this industry is quite great. So Ronke Posh, over to you quickly.
Okay, I don't know what the question is, and I don't know why I was also asked to put on my camera alone when Jude never puts it on. And safety tick is here and there. So I feel bullied. I feel bullied this morning.
Let's hear you.
You said what?
The question for her.
Okay, I said I wanted her to share our thoughts, right? Ronke Posh, share your thoughts, especially we're talking about the need for the emergence of the Ministry of Private Schools. And the ministry in May mentioned something that they were not, they were focused more on the public school, especially when the pandemic situation began to cause schools to shut down. And that left room for interpretation. And the interpretation was more of, you know what, if we're saying as a ministry, which covers both public and private, what exactly should be the need for private schools being taken care of? So if I'm taking care of public schools and I'm saying that private schools, open interpretation, take care of yourself, what exactly should that be as private schools? We believe that Ministry of Private Schools is more or less now an emergence to take care of the concerns of that 5,000 or the more than 5,000, the registered and both the unregistered.
Okay, it's still quite convoluted for me. Maybe it's the morning, or maybe I'm just being thick. So I don't really understand the question still. However, I'm as a private school stakeholder, I do not expect that the government should come and bail me out. If I live in another country, perhaps I would expect that. I like to be a realist. And in Nigeria, I said it yesterday, even lawma have not been paid. The people that are immediately working for the government, many of them have not been paid. So why should public organizations be waiting for the government? Now, I'm saying this specifically for Nigeria, for Lagos. Based on the situation right now, I'm not saying the situation right now is what it should be, but it is what it is. Let us be realistic. We have government public officers that need to be paid and haven't been paid. We have state schools, public schools that need to be looked after, and there's no considerable intervention at the moment. Then private schools are waiting to be bailed out by the government. It's not realistic yet in Nigeria. And I keep saying in Nigeria because I know that other countries, I mean, I still speaking to a friend of mine in Virginia or somewhere yesterday, and she was telling me that the government gave grants to businesses in the States. They are not going to give us grants and you know, it's here and there, it's dotted here and there. We don't have a system that works in Nigeria. We are working towards it. But right now, let's just face it. If you are sitting down and waiting for government to bail you out as a school, I just believe that it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. They're not going to bail you out. You're going to have to Just like we are the government of our electricity, just like we are the government of our water, just like we are the government of many of us, even the roads that in front of our house, we can't get to our homes if we don't fix the roads. Just like we buy diesel and we do so many things that the government should be doing, with this private school, we need to be doing it right now, whatever we can, to ensure that it moves. That's why parents need to collaborate with schools to ensure that there's continuity. It's not a state. It's not a state of private schools. School owners have always been making so much money, like I've heard some people say, and now it's our turn to keep the money. And that's because it's a misplaced priority. Parents don't actually. Some parents don't actually understand the value of education. The COVID-19 lockdown has proved that many parents don't value education, so they rather have their children at home as opposed to paying the school fees because they believe that it's high. So let's not wait for the government. Whatever you can do, you will do. Unfortunately, some people have already had to close down their schools. We don't want that situation to be that way, but it is what it is right now, unfortunately.
All right, thank you. Safety Chick, quickly, I would like you to share your thoughts on this, knowing fully well that you've worked with several organizations, Department of State, regulation bodies, especially when you're organizing your school safety summit. You've worked with the Safety Commission. And I'm sure that you've had some level of experience, how working with them has contributed to the development of the things that you do, has also added value to that. So can you use that working relationship or working experience as a case study to look at the subject matter of today, that we're looking at the Ministry of Private Schools? Now, the Ministry of Private Schools, imagine if you were able to get so much support from a commission. Imagine there was a ministry that was set up with best of expression to take care of the concerns of standard, not just palliatives. We're not talking about the COVID-19 people asking for grant, because the concern of the ministry is wide, and is wide enough that we cannot afford the current blind spot to keep the schools out of the dark. We keep talking about competing in a global space. One of the ways we need to do that might be to explore how we can nurture deliberately private schools the best. So, Safety, could you just share with us?
Okay, so what about this? If we want it to be separated as a different ministry, that might be a very difficult buy in this time, because already Nigeria is grappling with a situation where we're saying there are too many functions that are decentralized, and they're trying to see how to bring all these different agencies and ministries together, as opposed to duplicating several. What I would rather propose, or what should be looked into more, is ensuring that the particular unit, the particular department that caters to private school is made to be more functional. It's supported with as much resources as possible. Because if we want it to be separate, that might not happen. But if everything that is private is engaged in particular unit, department, came in, then to some extent they are going to be met. We should remove waiting things.
Okay, Safety Chick, it seems like you're having a network challenge. Let's talk to Odetola while we wait for that connection. Ebenezer Odetola, good morning. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm here. Good morning, Mr. Rotimi.
Okay, so good. I need to see your face. Yes. Okay, so
Yes,
good.
I think.
Yeah. So we're talking about the Ministry of Private Schools, and I'm sure a lot of people are still finding it difficult to let the topic sink in, or they're struggling with it. The truth about it is, if you, as an educator, looking at the dreams that you have, working with private schools, being someone who also has his business concern, what would the world be like if we had a private school ministry? We had what does that spell for people who probably are doing things like you do, where you had desire to train educators and you want your training to be widely spread? what would be your, do you think is something that is a welcome development? Would you love that to be a thought to be explored? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Rotimi. Apart from being a welcoming idea, it is something that is visible, that it is even possible. If not for a lot of politics in our country, this will have been one of the best things that will have happened to private school teachers, private school owners out there. So imagine what exactly is happening right now. Talking about this teacher salary, talking about even school not opening and more. If there's a structure in place that okay, we have a minister of private school instead of a director, because a director is still going to report directly to so many people before it gets to the government, before it gets to the presidency. So why don't we just have a ministry like what we have the NAPS, like the one we have like NAPS now? That NAPS is meant to be something like close to Ministry of Education, but a lot of politics around it. I can actually say that a lot of politics around it make it not functioning as NAPS. Like for now, they are meant to be the voice, they are meant to be the major voice for educators out there. So if there's a proper office that is set for the organization of so many things that is happening in the private sector, I think so many things will come. And it may not actually come at once, boom. It can come in form of process. They can set a kind of office in the Ministry of Education that will function better. And by the time it functions better, we can be reporting there for some time before the office grows to something big. But as I said, politics will not make those things possible. If there is still a lot of people thinking about how to bring down so many things and how to fulfill their own selfishness out there, this thing will not be possible. But I see a lot of possibility in it. It's going to help consultants. It's going to help private school teachers. It's going to help school owners. There will be a kind of regulatory of what is happening in private in a primary and secondary school. And with this alone, a lot of problem of okay, school is not private school is not registered. Something happened in this private school. Some of those things are going to be are going to be cropped. Like how the as you mentioned quality assurance. Quality assurance is actually functioning very well. And imagine quality assurance is like a ministry that is set up for just private school alone. That means every week they'll be going out there to check how many private school that is without a good equipment, say sick bay, this and that. And the private school can even serve as a yardstick towards so many things private that the public school want to do. So imagine that they signed the guideline on Monday, and that guideline was huge. I am very sure there's a ministry that is private school and a ministry that is existing now that is public school. If we want to implement that policy sent by government, I'm very sure that private school will be the first to implement those things effectively than private school, than a public school. That simply means that if there's a ministry like that, it can even serve as encouragement to public school out there. And I think it is possible. But because of the nature of what is happening right now, corruption and a lot of people taking advantages of so many things, and if it is even established, a lot of people will take advantage of it, and so many things will happen. I'm not going to say it is not possible. It is possible, but if we are uprighted in thinking, if we are uprighted in not being selfish, I'm very sure the possibility will be a reality.
Okay, thank you. Let me just read some comments from our guest online. And apart from the greetings, thank you, Favor L. Idogun, for joining. Blessing Yakwe, thank you for joining. Carol Paulo, thank you for joining. Matthew, Ashimolo Ademuyiwa, thank you for joining. The excellent teacher, thank you for joining. Abigail Solomon, thank you for joining. Glory Garden Schools, Abeokuta, thank you for joining. Walking High with Piros, thank you for joining. So, Glory Garden Schools, Abeokuta says, first, Ministry of Private Schools will be a duplication of an already existing arm of the Ministry of Education. All that is needed is to strengthen the arm. And then, okay, Carol saying good morning. Ronke say something. Okay, so basically that's that. So I'm going to ask Titi to wade in on this matter. Titi, I would like you to address the issue of what would be your scorecard in terms of consultative, the extent of consultation or consultative approach within the current ministry framework? And also, what would you consider as the drive to have a ministry of private schools? Do you think that it's just a mere duplication? What now happens, so to speak, if that happens? Will it mean that the Ministry of Private Schools is still taking care of public schools? Because I think there's a bit of distortion there. What would you say?
Thank you, Rotimi. I think I'll start by saying that, in Nigeria, we are battling a major issue, which is the cost of governance. So I wouldn't advocate for a ministry. I'll go with what, Glory School said, is really more of how to strengthen it. We are being weighed down by the cost of government. You find out that once we pay out, salaries and all that, there's barely enough to do anything. So I wouldn't want to add to it. I'll say instead, how do we strengthen it? How do we ensure that there's more consultation? In Nigeria, generally, there doesn't seem to be a lot of consultation in making a lot of things. With technology, I don't see why we can't make this consultation open. You know how people sign petitions online and say, you know what, I've had 3,000 signatures. So that's really how it should be. Consultation should be such that the date that those things are happening, it's announced, everybody knows what it is. You can also walk in, give your own thoughts. You can join a poll online. I think we need more of that, so all the stakeholders actually being taken into consideration. When I look at what's happening, it appears, I can't say, if you don't see the data behind it, I can't say categorically they're not carrying everyone along. But when I see the results, I'm worried, did they carry everybody along? Even, I was shocked when I heard that, a group of parents are insisting that, schools open. So I'm wondering which group of parents are these? I'm a parent and I would not want my child to go and do exams under conditions that I know are not safe for them. Because remember that exams are not an end in themselves. They're really a means to an end. So you do exams because it's not the end. What you're trying to do is to get the next level. And if the exams cannot be taken, there are, alternatives for it. So look at what being said for IGCSE. If they can't take the exams, then they look at alternatives. So I'm really more for how can we ensure that there's more consultation, because there's wisdom in bringing everybody and ensuring that all needs are met. So that's really where I feel that I see that it's lacking. We need to have more people talking. We need to ensure that we are doing everything in the best interest of everyone, and it's in the best interest of the majority. It will never be something that everybody is happy with. But what government tries to do is the majority. And I know that private schools are suffering, but it's important that we also put a balance to this. In the end, the balance is with the majority, and the majority are in the public schools. But having said that, that doesn't mean that other minorities should not be taken into consideration, and in this case, private schools are in minority. So I feel it's really more of how to strengthen it. But remember that one of the disadvantages is the fact that a lot of private schools are not registered, and a lot of us are not doing things together, because there's power in a united voice. Look at what has happened with Black Lives Matter. It started with someone talking about it, and there was a kind of unity, and so everybody took it on. So that even companies that are not taking it on are being looked at and are being, stigmatized. So there's something about us to being a united voice. I think because the private haven't come together to be a more united, voice that are taking care of all the stakeholders. They're just, in my opinion, there are just too many private school associations, and I think we can do more if we come together and are one voice. Let's have a platform that creates a bit of unity, so that when we speak, our voice are heard. When we speak, our concerns are heard. But I will say no for the Ministry of Private Schools. Thank you.
So before I let you off, I'm coming to safety check. But before I let you off, in less than 60 seconds, Titi, being a consultant, being a vendor, I would like to bring two questions to you. Number one is, are we saying that if, from what you said, that the only way you could have a Ministry of Private Schools is to set it up as a structure of what exists now? And is it that Ministry of Private Schools cannot come in terms of functionality as opposed to brick and mortar? So where then is the innovation and creativity? It seems that everybody just wants to hold on to what we have and status schools, where the cheese is moving, and we're not even asking who moved my cheese. So we seem to be comfortable with now, and we're praying that we'll strengthen the arm. For how many years? 30 years, 40 years do we need to strengthen the arm? Are we playing politics, or are we being direct and pungent about this matter? Please, in 60 seconds.
Rotimi, once human beings are involved, there's politics involved. So what I would say is, how do we make it more open? How do we make it more transparent? How do we leverage on technology to do that? So we already have some bodies, that are, like we all said, we know that NAPS is there. So mine is, how do we make it more transparent? How do we empower, and how do we make it more inclusive, so that everybody's voice, so to speak, can be heard?
I like that, and that was very short and brief. So, safety chick, I heard you were saying something just before the network went off. So, do you want to just share from your practical point of view how you've been experiencing partnerships and what you think can move on from that?
So this is what I think about different agencies and organizations in government. If we want to create a separate ministry, it's going to seem like a duplication of function. And so because we do not want a duplication of function, what is really important at this time is to strengthen what exists. And since we already know that NAPS has been doing a great job, the department or unit in charge of private schools within the ministry must work really closely with NAPS to ensure that this is work. And you see, what would make things work is actually putting the right systems in place. It's not enough for us to just say strengthen the system. It's about putting systems that would ensure that strengthening happens. So for example, the education quality assurance thing happening here in Lagos, it's because someone decided that we need to take this a step further, and practical steps were put in place, and today we can all see the difference. So I would rather that instead of a separate ministry, what exists must be strengthened, and then organizations working from the outside who are doing an amazing job must be allowed to work together with them. They must be supported at all levels. As a matter of fact, they should work hand in hand, because they are bringing the perspectives from outside. Because you see, most times when things are happening within the government, if the right people who are at the front lines are not involved, there will be a disconnect. It's just like saying a curriculum has an aspect that talks about safety education. And I can tell you categorically that I've been to different kinds of schools in this country. And for some children, it was when they saw me or heard through my volunteers that they were hearing about safety for the first time. So that means there's a disconnect from the top to the bottom. So that's the same thing here. We must ensure that we strengthen what works, and that what is currently available must work with frontliners like the different associations. And again, when we're talking about associations need to come together. You see, many times people want their own association to be the one at the front and another one at the back. They want their own names to be at the front line. It shouldn't be. Collaboration is really going to help us achieve so much more, most especially at this time. So I think we really need to lose that thing of wanting to only be the one that our names are at the front and who are the ones moving it and others are not. I think if we all have healthy self-esteem, we would understand that we are all great, we're all important in our own right. And so working together with others does not dim our shine. If nothing else, it pushes our agenda forward. And so that's what I think about it.
Thank you so much. So we'd like to also thank some additional people who've joined us online. We'd like to thank Carol. We'd like to thank Okenfo Ajayi and others who are joining as well. And thank you for your comments and those who are watching across the world. This is the Good Morning Education Show. And today we are speaking on the topic of the Ministry of Private Schools. And as I would like to bring another round of questions, I would like to bring Mr. Jude on board to answer this question. So It seems like we're getting a little bit confused, Mr. Jude, as to saying when we say ministry, probably also a lot of us need to be schooled when we talk about ministry. So ministry is not necessarily we saying that we want a Ministry of Education, but this time around don't deal with public schools, deal with private schools. The setup of the ministry and the DNA of what works in the ministry is quite vast. It's still the Ministry of Education. It's just like saying that you have a permanent secretary and you have a director, you have two permanent secretaries, or it's like you're saying you have two commissioners or whatever it is. So I want you, as Jude, you've been talking about the sector growing beyond the way we see it, not compared to past, not even compared with present, but retrospect to the future. We have countries, we have places like, for example, some countries have Minister of Happiness. Some countries have, let's say, for example, Kenya has a University of Fatherhood, not just University of Parenting, University of Fatherhood. When do we get to a point where we jettison what we have as a reference point from the past and look at the future? Because the future is content, the future is capital, the future is not something that we need to reduce to our current realities or what we struggle with. So I want you to talk from that perspective, Jude, as you look at the topic of today. You know, we've talked about this in behind the scenes, we've talked about what the future of education is. And if we're talking about AI, we're talking about those things. The truth about it is that if we're not even able to look at the possibility of flexibility in the structure of the regulatory framework of school system, then we are even seeing that the problem is not so much of rules or curriculum. The problem really resides in the system. So please share your thoughts on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rotimi. I've listened to everyone, and I think we all have our perspective to the topic. And I still hold that who decides the standard for schools? And if you say it's public sector that decide the standards for schools, what is the rating, or how do they rate it in terms of functionality, facility, and delivery? So for Ministry of Private Schools, it's not, people are thinking of it as the government will start funding some people or start funding some. It's more of an operational kind of ministry. It's more of an operational kind of ministry, representing the interests and the progress of private schools with one voice. Now we have the government representing public schools with their own one voice, right? But private schools, we have different voices, and it's not a matter of them coming together, because we always say they should come together. But private school on their own, they have the way of categorizing themselves, that we are better than this, we are better than this school. So that shows that they need one voice, in the sense that it might be represented as a ministry, not functionally, not funded by government, but by private pockets too. So when we talk about the private ministry, is to help private school chart a course for the future of this country. We can't be waiting for public schools to chart a course for our country, because the truth is that they are not even equipped enough to chart a course for our country. So when we try to represent our interests, we should look at interests that actually pushes our ideal educational plans ahead. So if we look at public schools, what are they bringing to the table that makes them forward thinking? Let's sit down and ask ourselves, what do a public school bring that makes them forward thinking? And compare it with what private schools are bringing.
All right. Jude, can you? Okay, thank you so much for that. Very thoughtful point. I'm going to switch over to Ronke Posh now. And I'm going to ask you, Ronke, so being someone who is a voice in the space and being someone who is also involved directly with schools, what I would like to find out from you is what would be that number one priority that you expect in the place of government or regulators working with the private school? What would be that number one priority they should focus on?
Okay.
Hello?
I think her mic.
Your mic?
What will be the number one priority of whom?
What would you advise should be the number one priority for regulators in terms of working with private schools or government or governance? What should be that number one priority?
At this time?
Yes, at this time.
There's a delay. It's a delay in the sound reaching me. Number one priority, I'm not sure what the...
At this time, yes, at this time.
What should be the number one priority at this time for regulators?
No, in your own, in your own.
Yeah, I can understand that.
In your own way, in your own words.
Well, there's a lot of corruption in the system. We just need to get things to work. That's all. A lot of it has to do with funding. And so if the corruption continues, the money can't reach a lot of people. We have the answers, we have the solution. And I even believe we have the money. If Slums to School could collaborate with Microsoft and get 48 children online and have very, very sophisticated ICT systems, even better than many, if not even all the private schools that I've seen already, then it's very, very possible for us to get all our public school children online. Are we willing? So there's a mindset thing, there's a corruption thing, the value system erosion in the country. So the priority is just to implement. The solutions are there. Everywhere you go, there's a document floating around from one ministry, one association, from one place or the other. And they are reasonable, very robust solutions that are being proffered. So it's not like we don't have answers, but to implement, we need money. We even have people that want to do it. But to implement, it's a whole different ball game in Nigeria. That's where the challenge is.
All right. Thank you. Titi, please, I'd like to... Okay, Titi, what would you pick as the number one priority you will counsel regulators to focus on in this period?
Okay.
Hello?
Divorce. Okay, her mic.
Titi, your mic.
Hello, sorry about that, and I was talking. So I want to start by saying that remember that when we talk about government is father to many children. What that simply means is that government is father to both the private and the public schools. So when we talk, I know we're all passionate about private school, but remember that, it's father to many children. So you have 10 children, 7 of them are public, actually 8 of them are public, 2 of them are private. So they need to always take that into consideration. Yes, I know it's skewed more towards the 8, but they do have things that are also for the remaining 2. That having said that, I think what's paramount at this time continues to be the safety of everyone. When they look at any policies they are bringing out, they need to look at the safety of everyone, safety of the children, the teachers, and all the various stakeholders. The second thing I would say is that as they look at safety, they need to realize that anything that is implemented needs to be realistic and cost effective. So if you're not bringing money, you need to balance your requirements, which is why the option of schools continue to remain close for me is really the way to go. But how do we continue to ensure that learning takes place? Learning takes place through various means, with available resources, without excessively planning to scale up at this time, which is really not the right time to scale up. So really, how do we continue to allow the children to continue to learn? Radio, TV, worksheets, online, whatever it is, let's just continue to ensure that the children are safe, the children are learning. And as much as possible, let learning not be a one way. Let's try to see how to supplement it, so that two-way communication, two-way planning for the midterm and long-term future of the sector. Thank you.
I like that. So even your thoughts in 30 seconds, just one thing you would advise or counsel that the regulators should focus on at this period.
Yeah, for now, it's collaboration, for them to be able to think of collaborating with so many people out there without any selfish thoughts and any hidden agenda. Because with collaboration, a lot of things can happen. And I'm very sure that if they can collaborate with a lot of people out there, there are a lot of possibilities. There's nothing impossible on planet Earth if not for transparency and collaboration. Thank you.
And then safety check.
So he has actually said it all. So I'll just summarize it in one sentence. Collaboration amplifies impact. So we must collaborate.
Awesome. It's been a great time today. As we're about to draw the curtains on today's episode, I would like us to understand that conversations like this are expected to come up to help us get to stay our minds on moving away from what we are seeing in perspective and becoming futuristic in nature. We need to explore mediums and ways to ensure that our sector has the kind of possibilities that we all talk about, train about, think about, speak about, sleep about, and also to bring out points that from divergent views, we're able to also see the place of growth. In some cases, when what we need to have, it's not available, it's not there. There is a need for us to advocate for growth, for strengthening, like some people have said, and sometimes you need to jettison the old and birth the new. The fantastic thing about it is that we'll continually always have things like this, topics like this, that will raise us to think and not stay in our comfort zone, that will raise us to begin to stretch and push ourselves, even in the divide of what we face. So thank you all for joining us today. I'd like to ask our viewers out there to follow our panelists and analysts on social media. Safety Chick is on YouTube. She's on YouTube, she's on Facebook, she's on Twitter, she's on Instagram. And Rhoda Adigo, unfortunately, was not able to join us today. She's also on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. Please follow Rhoda, follow Safety Chick, follow Jude Ashedu. He has a learning community on Facebook. Follow Odetola Ebenezer Israel, and he's on YouTube. Subscribe to the channels, like the channels, follow, like the videos, share the videos. Ronke Posh is on YouTube, she's on Facebook, she's on Instagram, she's everywhere. Make sure you follow. And Titi, I will not make that mistake today. You must hear me say, follow Titi on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and all that. Follow the platform. Thank you to our friends, our families, our sponsors, our partners for joining us today and for making this session possible. So we will come your way tomorrow, same time tomorrow, 8 a.m. I believe it's sign off and goodbye for now. So I'd like our participants to hear the final goodbyes from our analysts. So starting from Eben. Eben, goodbye.
Goodbye. Bye.
Bye. And be safe. Be safe.
Be safe. Yeah, it's very important. Very important. All right.